very much for coming here, and welcome to the Microsoft Teams and SPFx sessions. I am Luca Bandinelli, and I am a program manager in the OneDrive and SharePoint product group.
And I'm Yuri Dogandjiev, and I'm a software engineer on Teams and tech lead for the tabs area.
And technically speaking, we are part of the developer platform in the Teams as part of the two different product groups. So basically the two developer platform teams working together, developing this session for you. So before we get started, how many of you guys are using Teams in your organization?
Wow.
Cool. And how many of you are developing on top of Teams, either bots or cards or tabs? Cool. So Microsoft Teams is a great client that brings together multiple functionalities. Basically, we are positioning more and more Teams as the Office hub. So on that case, the user can go to Microsoft Teams and basically does everything from there. People can communicate and reach other colleagues or do multi-chat and multi-conversation by using the conversation either as one-to-one or group conversations. People can collaborate together by using Office 365 application and accessing files and being able to view and edit files or even SharePoint pages from Microsoft Teams tabs. And administrators have powerful capabilities to be able to manage Microsoft Teams through their Teams management in Admin Center at tenant level. And you can use policies both from schedule and call and application policies, and can be managed centralized across the entire tenancies from one single cockpit. And of course, Microsoft Teams has been designed since the beginning with customization and extensibility as a mindset. As a matter of fact, you can create and you can customize almost every part of Microsoft Teams by using custom code. You can get content, you can be able to augment content in chats by using customizations. You are able to integrate your custom solutions by using tabs. And now with the SharePoint Framework, you can also able to surface components that normally can surface in app pages or web parts as Teams tabs. So if we take a look at the overall extensibility platform of Microsoft Teams, we can have tabs, and then we have bots, extensions, notifications, and adaptive cards that are also being, basically they use the same underneath technology behind the scenes. And this is the slide that recollect that together. Microsoft Graph is the key API behind that. You are able to expose and access all this information through Microsoft Graph, and you are able to access Microsoft Graph directly from Microsoft Teams in your customization, SPFx being one of these examples for that. There is also powerful administration capabilities and functionalities, which is the one I was mentioning before. And yet, also for the admin standpoint, everything is exposed through Microsoft Graph. So as an example, Microsoft Teams have this concept of the tenant application catalog that you as a developer can use, or you as an administrator can use in order to deploy customizations to your tenancy. There is a user interface available on Teams on that. There is also a rich application lifecycle management API exposed through Microsoft Graph that you can use in order to manage your application in the tenant app catalog. And you will see later during the presentation that one of the functionalities that we have for integration between SharePoint and Teams take advantages of these rich APIs. So let's go through all the functionality that you can use in Microsoft Teams. We will start with bots and cards, and then we will move to tabs, because basically right now the major integration that we have within SharePoint and Teams is through tabs. This is the first step that we are doing. This is not promising anything, but for sure we are exploring other areas to integration to have a way more rich development framework that you can use across multiple products in Microsoft 365. So bots, they give you the ability to interact with the end user, they give you the ability to have your application being able to get access through the chat message or the chat tab to the end user. End user can basically use natural languages, or they can use the commands that are available on the Teams Rich Client or web in order to interact with the bots. They use the underneath Microsoft Bot Framework, which is the same bot framework that is used in other products that Microsoft provides. So there is a framework that is basically unique. It's not unique for Microsoft Teams, but it's shared across multiple applications. And they support actionable message. So you can basically have a bot that can show you a rich card, and from the rich card you are able to provide actionable messages, and you can connect your code to the actionable messages so that the end user can interact even further with your custom applications. We then have the messages extensions, which is basically the ability for your application to interact to the end users. So end users basically can query or post information to your applications, and your service can retrieve this information that the user needs to access in order to fulfill and complete their business requirements or their day-by-day work. And they can basically show up cards and messages that they can interact with that. An example is basically an example is just like you can have your application, the user can go there and interact, and through card you can provide this information directly in the chat box. So the idea here is you are in a chat, you are not leaving where you are very focused on the chat, and you can now interact and augment the chatting experience. That can then be a one-to-one chat or can be a group chat with your applications. And then finally, of course, we have adaptive card and actionable messages, which is the declarative way to provide and augment a chat experience to the end user. The important thing about adaptive card and actionable messages is just like because they are declarative and because we take care of the rendering experience, the promise that Microsoft makes is that the same experience will be through and across all the devices that you have, from the web to the rich client to the mobile application. So now you don't have to take care about the rendering, and you don't have care about behaving differently or being aware of which kind of platform you're using, but because you are declarative and you are providing your declarative user experience using adaptive card, we will take care of the rendering across of all these platforms. And again, because we support actionable messages, you are able to inject and interact your custom code very easily, again, declaratively, and the end user can have the seamless experience by interacting with actionable messages across web, rich client, and mobile. So let's have a quick look around messaging, both messaging and extensions.
Give a quick demo here of the bots, messaging extensions, and adaptive cards functionality that Luca just described. In this little test team I have, I've created an engineering channel for us to discuss some engineering topics with my team. And in here, I can do a variety of things. For example, I can use my messaging extensions down here. They're all shown as, you can either pin them underneath the compose box for quick access, and anything that overflows is in this extension menu. Of course, there are a lot more that you can get from the store. Now, I've pinned this Jira messaging extension over here because I want to share a task with my team and have them take a look. So I'm going to just pop this open. And by default, the messaging extension can return a list of most recent items or most important items. I can also search through the list. As Luca mentioned, this is actually powered by the same underlying infrastructure. So bots, messaging extensions, and adaptive cards, you basically have a backend service that's registered with Bot Framework. It's integrated as an app in Teams. And when I type here, for example, Avengers, it's actually sending my query to the bot, and the bot is returning an adaptive card representation of that item. Now, when I click on it here, we blow up the adaptive card and drop it right into your compose box. And then I can, add more text. I can say, hey, oh, but I don't necessarily know who to ask to look into this. It's a very important task. We need to get the gauntlet from Thanos. So I'm going to quickly hop over to my WhoBot. This is one of the bots that Microsoft provides as part of Teams. And so here I can quickly see what capabilities this bot has. And I will say, we really want to figure out, can we even do this? Can we actually go and get the gauntlet from Thanos? So I'm going to quickly ask who knows about data modeling. And Whobot can scan through all the messages that have flown throughout my organization and tell me anyone who's mentioned data models before or anything like that. And so I'm going to go ask Pradeep here to look into this issue and see if he can data model this item, and based on historical data of how many times we've done this before, see if it's feasible. And I'm quickly going to post that. And now you can see there's a rich card dropped here with representation of the items, the priority, and everything. I can, of course, click on here and quickly bounce out to the browser if I want to see the actual Jira site. More interestingly, I'm seeing here that the priority of this item is medium, which obviously is not high enough. This is a really high importance task. So I'm quickly going to jump over here to my Jira bot that I've been talking about. And I've already pulled up here the dev item, and I can say, hey, what's the priority, and I can quickly update it. And these are the actionable cards that Luca was telling you about. So this is a very rich card. You can basically do inline editing here. You can update the summary, the description of the item, and this works on mobile clients too. So if you happen to be on your phone, you can quickly do that from here. I'm going to update the priority to highest. And now this is sending a message back to my bot and telling it, hey, update the priority, and the priority now of the item has been updated to the highest priority. If I pull up the same item in here, you'll see the updated. The priority has now been updated to the highest level. So that's in summary a quick look at bots, messaging extensions, and rich adaptive cards. Back to you, Luca.
Thank you. Any questions so far? Yes. The question here is, how do you start a new bot?
You go to our team's documentation online and you follow the guide there. We do have a really great app called App Studio that is a great way to get started with some of this functionality. So let me pull that up real quick here. It's a little meta, but we have an app that helps you build other apps. So you can pull this in real quick. And then the app has like, and I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but it has a bot, so you can actually search for things. And this will search through our documentation and give you links to, for example, like samples and things like that, very quick way to bounce out. And we also have things like a manifest editor. So if you want to quickly create a new app here and get started, this will really walk you through the end-to-end flow. You can give it a name, generate IDs, and the bot section will actually help you with the bot setup as well. So this is definitely the best way to get started if you're building a new app from scratch.
I think the question was the Whobot.
Oh, the Whobot.
Yeah, he said yes, it wasn't, but that's fine.
Sorry, I heard how do you get started with
that's what I heard as well, that's fine. But how do you start a new Whobot?
What about Whobot? Oh, Whobot is actually pinned by default in the little ... here. Everyone should see it in their Teams client. But if not, you can always go to the App Store and quickly search for it here. And it will walk you through the setup flow, and you can get to the app and go chat with it right there. So if you can't find a certain app somewhere, definitely go to the App Store. If you know the app exists and it's not in the App Store, then go talk to your tenant admin, because all apps can be turned on and off by tenant admins and configured. So, we get that query sometimes. It's like, oh, you guys have all these apps, but I can't find them in my tenant. Tenant admins are very, very cautious with this. And in the latest iteration of the admin portal, which I'll walk you guys through later, we have really detailed ways for tenant admins to manage apps individually as well as prepend them for users. So we're hoping that will really increase the availability of apps throughout all the organizations out there.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So let's talk about tabs. And tabs is really this functionality that Teams has, and some of the other, or most of the other, I would say all of the other applications that are around the same space really don't have. Tabs give you the ability to bring what you care most as part of your one-on-one chat or part of your group chat. With tabs, you can surface rich content. Doesn't matter if it's Microsoft content or your third-party content. as part of your conversation and give a seamless experience. And while this may be kind of a nice to have experience in a tablet or in laptop, this is very critical for scenarios just like frontline workers that they live all the time and all day on mobiles, and really they need to minimize as much as possible jumping across multiple applications and multiple videos. And by using tabs, you can provide all the information that they need as part of a single application, and you can contextualize your third-party or second-party functionality in the teams, because you can get access to the team's context and you can access to whatever is part of the conversation, the channel, the group, the team, and so forth. So when we talk about tabs, we have, generally speaking, two different classes of tabs. We have personal static tabs. Yuri alluded to them a little bit before when he was talking about App Studio. Those are the tabs that users have independently if they are in a specific team or in a specific chat or in a specific channel. Those are the apps that you find in your app launcher, that they can be in the app launcher on the left, or your team experience, and available again through web as well as rich client and mobile. Personal statics app, by definition, they don't have any configuration experience. So they're supposed to be a ready, set, go kind of experience. You go there and you immediately have access to the information that you need the most without needing to configure them. On the other aspect of the tabs experience, you have the configurable tabs. And configurable tabs are basically tabs that provide a rich experience in chat and conversation in teams and channels. Configurable tabs, by definition, may have a configurable and or a reconfigurable experience, which means that you can decide to configure your tab only the first time that the tab got pinned on a channel, or you can decide that your tab can expose a reconfigurable experience, and if that's the case, we will show the reconfigurable option as part of the tab itself in the channel. So, as a recap, personal static tabs, they don't have a configuration experience. The package that you use in order to deploy your solution through the Microsoft Store or through the tenant app catalog that I was mentioning before can have multiple personal tabs. And if you do that, we will be able to take a look at that, and we will show them accordingly during your provisioning experience that the end user can go through in order to add the tab as your app launcher. And they support, as per today, they support provided hosted development model, which means that your solution has to be a provided hosted solution that lives somewhere else, maybe in Azure, and where you take care not only of the web and the data experience, but also of the UX experience. And the way that they will surface in Microsoft Teams is that they will be basically iframing your solution that lives somewhere else. Configurable tabs, as I was mentioning before, they have a configuration experience. They can have a reconfiguration experience. When you deploy your configurable tab as part of your solution, and again, we didn't mention that, but the Microsoft Teams manifest is quite a rich manifest, and you can have multiple functionalities and capabilities as part of your solution. It's not that you have to create multiple solutions if you want to have both experience and tab experience. You can have a single manifest and you can put everything over there. But of course, depending on which kind of customization and functionality your solution is providing, you have some kind of, no, I would not say limitation, but characteristics that you have to take care. Specifically for configurable tabs, a solution package and a manifest that you are providing as part of your solution can only have one configurable tabs. So if your solution requires multiple configurable tabs, you need multiple manifests for that. For configurable tabs, you can still use the provided hosted method, which is the same method that you can use in order to build your personal tabs. But right now, you can also use SPFx or SharePoint Framework in order to build configurable tabs. So let's take a look at tabs for a second.
So going back to the same engineering channel I'd created earlier, you can see up here I've already pinned some tabs that I want my team to have quick access to. So I can quickly switch to the Jira Tasks tab, and in here now I'll see the full list of tasks. I don't have to bounce out to Jira at all. I can see it right from here. I can delve into some of the details of each task and even make changes inline. The interesting thing about this, as Luca mentioned, is it's actually just an iframe solution that's hosted somewhere else. So I'll quickly switch here to our Planner Ideas tab that I've created. And this is a Microsoft build tab, but we on teams really believe in the 1P equals 3P. We really try to make everything that Microsoft teams can do, outside developers can do as well. And so Planner was one of our first partners that built on top of our public platform. And they're one of our most popular tabs. And you can see here, they follow the same model that everyone else does. So I'm going to geek out a little bit here. But I can quickly go take a look at the Planner tab. And one thing you'll notice in here is that this thing is just an iframe pointing to task.office.com. And so the Planner team were pretty much able to reuse most of their existing infrastructure, most of their existing UI to power this. You can see it's basically a slightly more tailored view of that. They strip out the header and their own navigation menu, but the underlying items, the way you interact with it, is pretty much identical across the board. So if you already have a web app, if you already have a stack and you're deploying to Azure or AWS or wherever it might be, or you have your own infrastructure, and your tab is already available, and your web app is already available out there, you can very quickly integrate into Teams and allow your own organization, or if you're targeting, if you're an ISV targeting external customers, allow them to quickly bring your content into their Teams experience and be able to quickly leverage it without having to leave the Teams client. And I can show you a few more tabs here. We have Lucid Charts. They do the same exact thing. Really rich experience. You can build all kinds of charts and things like that directly in here. GitHub, I've pinned a site with GitHub issues. I can quickly, some of these tabs are richer than others. We're working with some of our partners to make them like super rich to the point where the in-Teams experience is just as powerful as the browser one.
And some of these tabs also have a configure and reconfigurable experience, right? From where you can access directly from the client as well.
Yeah, the configuration experience is the same concept. This content right in here is also iframed. This is one of the few things that generally, if you have already an existing web app, you have to think through this config flow, and you might need to stand up a new page to host the config flow. But the config flow essentially provides the URL that then gets pinned as the tab in here. That's the only purpose of it. Eventually, at the end of the config, we get a URL and we pin it here as a tab. And all of these tabs, as Luca mentioned, are provider hosted. They're not hosted by us. We don't render any of this content. It's coming from task.office.com or Lucidchart. And we provide an SDK library for them to communicate with us, and they can match our theme. For example, if I switch here to dark theme real quick, you'll see that the underlying tabs as well, should be switching quicker. They follow some of our new theme. And the interesting about this is, provider hosted solutions, if you already have existing infrastructure, if you already have your own web app hosted somewhere, it's really great for you to leverage it. But if you're starting from scratch here, if you have to stand up a new service and handle authentication and handle data storage, then this can be very tricky. And this is where the SPFx based tabs come in. So I'll quickly switch back to Luca here so we can walk you through that, and we'll show you a demo of that as well.
That's a nice segue. Before moving that, any questions on provider hosted tabs? Yes?
Would you ever consider making a tab preloadable?
Say one more time?
Making a tab preloadable, so it's loaded before they click on the tab?
So the question here is, have you ever considered to make the tab preloaded so that the tab can be loaded before you click on the tab? And I guess the reason why you're asking this question is because your tab is doing a bunch of stuff, so when your user clicks on the tab, you don't want to have a lag experience that the user needs to wait. Is that because you're asking the question?
Yeah, so as we've built out our tabs platform, we were originally focused on just getting the basic functionality working, making sure the tabs can follow our theme, that they can authenticate the user, that they can do their basic work. Now that we have a kind of a critical mass of these provider hosted tabs, a lot of our users are coming back to us and saying, hey, this is great, but in the browser, I can open these multiple tabs, and the browser will keep them around, and I can quickly switch to them. In Teams, every time I go back, it's a full page reload. It takes time. And so this is something we're very aware of, and we are looking into it. We are focusing on it from a two-part way. One is, can we speed up the loading? For example, right now, you might have, if you're a dev here, and you might have seen, I switched, like in Electron, which is what the Teams desktop client is built on top of. We use web views to isolate these tabs in a separate process, and that adds a lot of overhead. In the latest version of Electron, we actually have out-of-proc iframes coming from Chromium, and so we plan to eliminate the web view completely, which will shave off probably at least a second off the load. We're also working on a solution that if you use AAD for authentication, you can fetch your auth tokens for your own web API from Teams, and we'll actually prefetch those tokens. As soon as the user clicks on your tab, we kick off the AAD request. By the time your page is loaded and asks us for the token, we'll already have it ready. That shaves another second off your load. So the first thing we're working on, and these are in parallel, we're working on these things, is just getting tabs loading faster across the board. The next thing we're looking at is, one, can we cache tabs, keep them around based on heuristics, maybe the last few that the user has used, or we have a concept of MRU and MFU, so we can do something like that. That's something we're also exploring. And then we're also, independently of that, working at making Teams more modularizable. So Teams right now is a single pane of glass. To switch to a chat, switch to a tab, it's a huge context switch. You lose a lot of context. And then with the tabs, it's particularly bad because they have to go through a full page reload. But we're working on ways to allow you to pull out tabs or apps or chats into separate windows and continue your conversation there, or keep your tab around for a while. I can't comment on the timelines of some of these things. They're pretty huge architectural changes to the core of Teams itself, but we are working on them very fast. And as you know, with Teams, we move very quickly. So, it shouldn't be that long before you see some of this coming.
And one of the commitment that you can see is that some of these things already shows up in SPFx-based tabs, as for example, authentication being one of those. So let's talk about SPFx-based tabs for a second. With the release on 1.80 and set-based refinements in 1.81 and 1.82, we basically made general available the ability for you to build an SPFx component and consume this SPFx component as a Teams tab. So we did that across the entire set of personas, from the developer to the admin to the end user, and we tried to make that as seamless as possible. So let's go through all these personas as well and see how you can benefit by building tabs by using SPFx. So as a developer, this is, to be honest with you, very, very simple. I'm not a professional dev, but I got that feedback both from developers in Microsoft as well as other developers. If you know how to build an SPFx component, which means if you know how to build a web component in the modern web APIs and web tools today, you can build a tab by using SPFx. You basically download your npm and gulp and Yeoman. You open your preferred IDE by using your preferred operating system and hardware, and now you are done. You create your solutions. You follow our guidelines by creating your solution by using SPFx. Then when you are ready to deploy, you go to the manifest, and you can basically specify the supported host of your web application, and you can say that my web application or my component want to show up as a tab in Teams, as a web part, or as an app page. The important message that I'm trying to give you over here is just like, you can use SPFx to just build a solution for Microsoft Teams. You can say, I'm working with a customer, or my company doesn't adopt SharePoint, it only adopts Microsoft Teams, but I really, really, really want to use SPFx to build a solution because there is a lot of advantages. You can do that. You can use SPFx to just target Teams. And even if your solution doesn't have SharePoint, the SPFx solution will work. And I'll tell you in a second why. But my point here is that please feel free and absolutely use SPFx even if you think it's the right solution for you, even if you're only targeting Microsoft Teams, because this is absolutely one of the scenarios that we want to do. Then, once you're done with the development, you have created your solution is ready to be deployed, you handle that information to the administrator. And the administrator is the only persona that needs to take care about SharePoint for a second. Because now the administrator needs to deploy the manifest, the package that was created with the manifest. And the package, being an SPFx package, can contain all the code, or can contain references and pointers to the code that the CDN where you are hosting your code. So you give this information to the administrator will deploy this package in the app catalog, and here the full governance of SharePoint Framework kicks in. The administrator is able to understand if the package has code, he or she is able to approve or deny the fact that the code is there, or if the code is not there, from which CDN the code comes from. If the administrator enables the Office 365 CDN and the code is part of the package, we automatically deploy the code that was part of the package in a place that is automatically synchronized with Office 365 CDN, so that your code can be reached as fast as possible, no matter from where it's consumed. And then once it's there, the administrator can also see if the code needs to access some web API that can be Microsoft Graph or any other web API that was registered in AD. Then the administrator is able to approve that from a super friendly UI. And once it's there, we introduced a new functionality which is called Sync to Teams. And what that functionality does, it basically uses the Microsoft Graph Application Lifecycle Management Microsoft Teams API to create the package in the Teams app catalog. So you don't have to deploy your solution in multiple places. You deploy your solution once in one place, then from the app catalog, you click Sync to Teams, and then the solution will show up to the end user in the tab picker to be able to be used. Then once the end user is able to select the tab and make that available as part of a channel, the same SharePoint Framework experience kicks in. So again, if you're building a solution just for Teams, that's fine. But if you're building your solution that will surface both in Teams and SharePoint, and you took care of the configuration experience as part of the property pane, we introduced it in the general availability version of the Teams integration, the same property pane experience, also in a Teams tab. So now you don't have to create two different configuration experiences if your component surfaces in Microsoft Teams or it surfaces in a SharePoint page. The same property pane configuration experience will be available, and you have full control of that configuration experience. You can also decide if this is a one-time configuration or is a multiple times configuration. So if your tab or your component supports reconfiguration. If that is the case, Microsoft Teams client is smart enough to understand that and provide you the information of the tab itself and reconfiguration within the Microsoft Teams client. Now, we said that this works on the web, this works on the rich client. And you know that one of the problems that right now we have is that the Microsoft Teams mobile doesn't support custom tab. But we're working on that. So this is just a proof of concept. There are developers that are working on that as we speak. But you can see that right now you have an SPFx tab showing natively in the Teams mobile client. I mean, I think that deserves an applause. So no timeline right now. So this is a commitment that we are providing, but there is no commitment on the timeline. But yes, we are working to be able to surface at least SPFx tabs and hopefully other kind of tabs, again, TBD, on the mobile client as well, in the same way that today they surface in the web and in the rich client. And the promise that the SPFx provides to you as a developer is that you don't have to do anything. The same package will automatically work as soon as our mobile client understands and started to surface third-party SPFx-based tabs. So if you want to have a little bit of geekness on how these things work behind the scenes, this is the slide for you. 3, 2, 1, digested. I know it's a lot of things. So let's talk about that a little bit. So the way it works is basically when you sync the information from the app catalog to the Teams app catalog by clicking Sync to Teams button in the SharePoint app catalog. As I said, we call the ALM API that Microsoft Teams provide through Microsoft Graph, and we automatically create the package at runtime. This is a very important thing, because it means that if your solution just requires a tab, you can absolutely use this flow and you have no problem. However, As I mentioned it before, the Microsoft Teams manifest is a super rich manifest that you can use to build a solution that can hook on multiple functionalities and capabilities that Microsoft Teams provides. If your solution basically requires 3-4 static tabs and 1 SPFx configurable tab, personal static tab, or 1 SPFx configurable tab, 1 both, and adaptive cards, and yada, 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 you cannot use the Syncs to Teams tab because, again, we are creating the manifest at runtime. However, we have documentation that gives you the ability to know how you created that manifest manually and what do you have to provide as part of the configurable tabs so that the same manifest that we create will be part of your manifest and the SPFx component will be able to run as part of your solution. This documentation is available right now in docs.microsoft.com. Once the package is created and the user picks up the solution as part of the tabs pickup experience, when the configuration show up the first time, what we do behind the scenes is that we take a look at the SharePoint site that is connected to your team. And the way that SharePoint and team integration work is just like if you have multiple channels, you have the same site behind the scenes, but you have multiple folders for files segregation across channels. And once we are there, we do 2 things. First off, if this is the first SPFx tab that you are creating as part of your solution or as part of your flow in a specific team, we create a hidden list where we will store all the information for the configuration. And then we create 1 item for each of the tab instances that we will use to persist the configuration that you use for your config experience. And that happens when you click OK the very first time. So once you're there, now everything is persisted in SharePoint, and you basically are able to go back and forward, close the session, reopen the session, and all the configuration that you saved when you added the tab the first time, or all the configuration that you are saving through the reconfiguration experience get persisted in SharePoint. So we have worked with a lot of partners that were working with us as part of the dev preview when we did the developer kitchen on Microsoft Teams plus SharePoint Framework together, and they were able to provide us a lot of great feedbacks, and they were able to build their solution on top of these new functionalities and capabilities. Thank you very much, you guys. Your help is fantastic, and we weren't able to make that without your feedbacks. So on that, let's take a look at SPFx tab.
I'm not going to waste any time here. I'm just going to jump straight into first SharePoint, show you the SPFx web part here that we'll be using to create this tab in Teams. Imagine your organization already has one of these. You've already invested time and energy, or you have developers who can build these SPFx solutions. I have the full manifest here that you can take a look. If you're familiar with SharePoint SPFx web parts, you already know the structure of this. The unique thing that we now have is this Teams folder that automatically gets created. And in there are the image assets that will be used for your application once it's created on the Teams side, and of course the manifest JSON that I was describing earlier. And in here, the magic that really SPFx provides is essentially this URL, which at runtime will hydrate and it will point to the underlying team site, SharePoint site that backs the team where this tab will be created. And we also do some additional magic here to help you authenticate so that it's a seamless sign-in experience where Teams is actually generating the auth tokens on your behalf. And so now this same web part that I have in SharePoint, I can switch to my Teams client, and I've already uploaded it to the catalog, the tenant apps catalog. When a user switches to the app store within Teams, there's this section here that will have the name of your company, and these are essentially the apps that are only available for your organization that tenant admins have uploaded, or that have gone through the SharePoint ingestion, and SharePoint has automatically uploaded to our catalog via the Graph APIs. I can see some details here. I can even go directly install it into a team, but I've already done that, so I'm going to hop back here real quick to my team, and I've created this logistics channel where we're going to be talking about inventory, and I've already pinned this as a tab. I can show you the full flow, but essentially now this becomes available and I can do that from anywhere. I can go to another team as well. Because it's uploaded to the app catalog, it's available in any team in the organization. And then once I pin it, that same SharePoint web part is used to render the tab in here. And again, we can geek out for a sec. Open DevTools. And if we take a look here at the iframe, you'll see this is pointing to SharePoint.com and the identifier for the web part. And really, SharePoint is essentially handling the hosting, the authentication, and all of that for you. And you can just focus on your business logic and building the actual experience that your organization needs. You don't have to deal with any of the other boilerplate stuff.
So the important part here is that if you go back to the DevTools, so if you take a look at the page that is pointing, is basically a system page in SharePoint and then the score layouts, which is always available on your tenant. So you will always be able to access this page even if you don't have any other site collection, even if you don't have any other site in SharePoint, even if your tenancy is not using SharePoint. Because there is the SharePoint infrastructure is part of your tenancy for groups as well as for OneDrive for business. You will always be able to access this page, which is the reason why, even if you're not using SharePoint, and even if you want to target your solution to be consumable through Microsoft Teams only, you can still use a SharePoint framework at the entire floor to make that solution being available in Teams.
Back to you, Luca.
Thank you very much. So while we were doing this journey to try to build as much as possible more and more Microsoft 365 workloads together under the same umbrella in terms of development framework, we were looking at the provider-hosted functionality and capability that Teams has for tabs, and we understood that there could be value to SharePoint for doing that. One, because they're highly successful. Second, because yes, SharePoint has an iframe-based model based on 2013 add-ins, but that model that was created more than 10 years ago, because yes, it was shipped in 2013, but was designed and developed way before, is based on infrastructure and capabilities that are no longer enhanced as part of the Microsoft infrastructure. For example, ACS. ACS is still available, but ACS in terms of functionalities and capabilities is way behind of Azure Active Directory. So considering that the tabs model, the provider-hosted tabs model in Teams is highly successful, and just like Yuri said, they are continuing investing on that, we thought that there were value to being able to provide the ability to have Microsoft Teams tab, provider-hosted tab, surfacing as web part or app page in SharePoint. So we made that preview in 1.8, and just like Vesa also announced it in the days before, this week we are announcing the general availability to being able to build your Microsoft Teams tab provider-hosted solution in SharePoint. So we did a couple of things here to make as well, to make again the developer experience and the end user experience as seamless as possible, so that you don't have to change your application, or you don't have to completely redesign your application to make that application being also available in SharePoint. So we did a couple of things. So the first thing is that we did work in SharePoint to understand the Teams manifest. So as long as you have a team manifest today that works in Teams, you deploy the Teams manifest in the SharePoint app catalog, and SharePoint will understand. As long as you are able to have a tab, you understand the tab, and we will be able to surface the tab. We also did some work in the Teams SDK, we as collectively Microsoft Teams product group as well as the SharePoint product group, to include the ability to modify or to surface your Teams tab solution in SharePoint, so that in the new SDK, or in the latest version of the Teams SDK, you are able to say that if you want a specific icon for a SharePoint Teams tab, for a Teams tab to surface in SharePoint, you can do that, and you can say that my Teams tab can only surface as an app page, which is the ability to have a full control in a page without any authoring experience in SharePoint, or my solution can show up as a web part, or both. This is something you can control. If you don't do that, your solution will still show up in SharePoint. So again, existing manifest work, but they will only show up in SharePoint. They will only represent themselves in SharePoint as app pages. If you want your provider-hosted solution to surface in SharePoint as a web part, you have to update to the next version of the SDK, and you have to explicitly say as part of your configuration. Actually, the Microsoft Teams product group also did a great job in order to surface the SharePoint context as part of your solution. So in the Teams SDK, in the similar way that in our SPFx libraries, we surface the full Teams SDK so that you can understand, you can work on your web part and on your component, and you can say, if I am in Teams, I want to do something different, etc., etc. The Teams product group did the same thing. So in the next version of the SDK, you are able to access on the SharePoint context for your provider-hosted solution, so that you can provide extra functionalities and capabilities as part of your provider-hosted solution. The only real requirement that you need to do in order to surface SharePoint, a Teams tab in SharePoint is that if you have a content security policy right now in your solution that limit rightfully the hosts that will be able to iframe you, and you also put teams.microsoft.com, you have to modify that policy and allow start.sharepoint.com so that your solution can also be iframed on SharePoint. Other than that, everything works. So a couple of UX examples. Once you've done that, you deploy that in the app catalog. This is an app page experience example. You will have that, and when the end user select that, you will have the same configuration experience. This is another important thing that we did. Similar to the SPFx in Teams, where we decided that the end user needs to have the same configuration experience between SPFx components, no matter where they are. We know that third-party tabs developers already spend a lot of time building the right configuration experience for Microsoft Teams, and we didn't want you as a developer to reinvent your configuration experience because we were targeting a different platform. This is the reason why when we are using a Teams tab provider-hosted solution in SharePoint, we will show up a dialog in the same way that Teams do, so that the configuration experience is exactly the same, no matter if you are in SharePoint or in Microsoft Teams. And again, we worked with some of the successful tab solution providers that they already have a super successful tab solution in Teams today. All these solutions today work in SharePoint as per now, and we are working more and more and more to being able to have other solutions that will work in SharePoint in the future. And again, to these partners that spend their time and their energy to work with us, thank you very much. Your valuable feedback has been phenomenal. So let's take a quick look at a Teams tab in SharePoint.
So going back to my team here, I showed you guys I already had some tabs on my Jira tasks board with the backlog for the team, my Lucid chart flow with some flow charts that the team might have created, as well as, for example, GitHub issues and Bitbucket repo. Now, if I switch over to my SharePoint site, you can see here I've already pinned some of these as pages in SharePoint, and I can access the exact same Jira tasks board directly from SharePoint without even going to Teams. And for the most part, this was done using the exact same manifest that Jira submitted to us for Teams, uploaded to the SharePoint app catalog, and it shows up here. We iframed them, we exposed the same SDK, same with Lucid chart flow. The same exact content works, and as Luca was saying, the only real difference is instead of hosted in Teams, these are hosted in SharePoint, so you have to update to the latest version of the SDK, which allows it to communicate with a SharePoint host, and then within there, you can see there is an iframe hosting the same Lucid chart endpoint that we host in Teams today, and all of that just works. They also had to update their CSP and XFrame options headers to allow SharePoint to iframe them. That is another unique thing. We're long-term looking at ways to standardize the hosting solution across Microsoft 365, so you only have a single domain to host against, but right now you have to think about that with these provider-hosted model solutions. And of course, the full list of apps that work today is greater than that. We have Rike, we have Trello, and all of these can also be converted to work as Webparts. So if you wanted to build, say, a dashboard out of a Rike and a Lucidchart and a Jira, you can use a SharePoint page and lay them out as different web parts. And then even more interestingly, you can then use a SharePoint tab in Teams to repin that back into Teams as a tab. Yeah, I can't wait to try that out.
That would be cool to try.
Back to you, Luca.
Thank you very much. So, is there one better? Is there one worse? Should I always create SPFx components? Should I ditch the tab, or should I not care about SPFx development model and always use the provider-hosted model? Well, no, right? So the reason why we're doing that is because we want to provide options to both end users and developer to being able to surface their solutions and their application to customers. So really, those are two models that they complement to each other. You can use both, you can use one of them. You can switch between one or the other. It really depends what you want to do. So if, for example, if your platform already exists, if you already spend a lot of effort and a lot of money in infrastructure and developing a solution that already has their rendering experience completely hosted in a provider hosted just like Azure, and you want that experience to be exactly the same no matter when it is hosted, and you want to target more than Microsoft Teams and SharePoint, and you want to target other applications and other platforms, provider hosted is the right way for you to do that. You already did that. Why do you have to remove that? As I said, we are also supporting provider hosted in SharePoint, so you can still and already increase the surface of the usage of your application without changing nothing. Provider hosted works also for personal and configurable tabs. So if you have a personal tab and you want your personal tab your solution is based on personal tabs, in Teams personal tabs, provider hosted is the way to do as per today. But as I said before, it requires more effort, and that effort can be absolutely justified if it's part of your business model. On the other hand, if you are just targeting JavaScript and Web API, if you do not have needs and requirement to host your own rendering experience in a provider hosted, but you want to target as much as possible Microsoft 365 solutions and application, the SPFx development model is the one to go. When we launched SPFx a little bit more than 2 years ago, we are now being able to target SharePoint pages in a variety of ways. We are targeting SPFx in Microsoft Teams tab, and as Vesa mentioned during the dev keynote, we are also working with the Office product group to being able to surface SPFx component as part of Office add-ins. So the same component will be able to work across more and more Microsoft 365 workloads. They work for configurable tab. They give you the ability to use single sign-on no matter where you are. So you can use a single sign-on in the rich client as well as in the web client, and in the future also in the mobile client, just like we mentioned it, without you needing to do any changes on the code. Everything in terms of authentication and token acquisition is handled behind the scenes by the SPFx. And as we said before, we can leverage the Office 365 infrastructure. You can host your code in your own CDN, or if you want, you can package the code and have the code living as part of Office 365 and Office 365 CDN. This last aspect is extremely important, especially if you're working with high regulated customers that by law, they need to hold the code, control the code, and govern the code, and they cannot allow code that lives somewhere else to be used in their tenancy. I can think about GCC High and any other customers that have these requirements by law. So again, that's from the end user and developer standpoint. And then very quickly from the admin standpoint, we also have the Office 365 admin portal and the Teams portal that can give you the ability to manage application and give you the ability basically to control which application is available to the user or pre-pin some of the personal applications to the end user. Do you want to do a quick demo of that? Yep. Perfect.
So, and maybe actually you should just go to the next slide and chat for a sec about that, because I was just going to demo both together.
So before doing that, I don't want to
steal your thunder.
One more thing. So during the session we said SPFx, Teams tabs, provider hosted. One of the things that we keep mentioning is just like if you want personal tabs, so you need to use provider hosted because SPFx do not support personal tab, which is true today, but may not be true in the future.
So over here, I'll show you quickly a personal app that quickly looks at the email in my inbox and returns it. It's just a proof of concept. The manifest for it is right here, and you might notice is essentially just an SPFx web part. We had to do some magic with the manifest, but eventually the same placeholders that you use in the team scoped configurable tabs you'll be able to use here. And you can see here that there is a static tab with a personal scope, and it's pointing to my SharePoint site that actually hosts the web part. And again, all the same authentication, SSO functionality works, and the same SPFx web part works within Teams as a personal app. And quickly going back to what Luca was saying about the administration of all this, all these apps, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, whether they're from our global app catalog or they're from your tenant app catalog that your tenant admins have managed, they all show up in here in our Teams admin portal. And I can quickly go and set up some policies. And with this latest Teams admin portal, you have some very, very rich configuration capabilities. And you can pre-pin apps to the app bar for users in your organization that you often use. And those same personal apps that same personal app, email app that I just showed you can be pre-pinned for all your users. So you can go to SharePoint, use your existing knowledge or existing SPFx web parts to create both configurable and personal static tabs in Teams, and then using the admin portal, you can make them available for some or all of your users by default. And I can't show you this right now because it takes usually about 24 hours for this to sync across the entire organization, but what will eventually happen is these apps will be pre-pinned here to the app bar for every user in that organization. They won't have to go find them in this little overflow menu. And the users will be able to very quickly access them. So you can create very custom views of Teams where you can have a sales-oriented Teams product and an engineering-oriented Teams product with a completely different app bar with pre-pinned tools that each of these organizations uses via our new admin portal.
So a couple of things here. First and foremost, don't try that at home. Highly skilled trainers here. This, just like Yuri said, this is right now a proof of concept that proved that some of the things that we have as part of our infrastructure work. So this is the way that will work. This is not supported yet. We are working actively in order to make that happen. You will see an announcement about these things this calendar year. I can mention that. I feel pretty confident to say that. Unfortunately, I can say something a little bit more than that. Second thing, he's stemming from the rich client. He's calling Graph. I'm taking a look at my email. How cool is that? I didn't have to do anything. It works on the rich client. It's not web. So that's another powerful thing is about SPFx. We were able to fetch the token from Microsoft Graph and give you the ability to read your email by using Microsoft Graph without having to do anything in terms of register my application in AAD, going to AAD portal, and basically going and select all the information. The only thing that I had to do is to go to the SharePoint API management page and approve or deny these APIs. So again, the full power of SPFx is available on the Microsoft Teams from the rich client as well as from the Teams mobile. So I think this is cool. So with that said, and this is what we just said, we are right on time. Thank you very much for being here. I hope this was useful.